I just can't help but start thinking about the conversations you're having now are a little bit different than what they were a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've spoken to how many agents and about either their lives, their business, what their pains are, what their struggles, where they're successful in doing. What are the similarities, or what are you typically hearing from people when you sit down and have a conversation to another agent? Do you have commonalities? Is there a common thread between most of these folks in our industry? How would you describe it?
It's balance of life.
That's the biggest pain point typically.
For sure.
Yeah.
A lot of the agents that don't have leverage because they don't have a big enough business to afford it and justify it, they're in the weeds doing everything that you need to do. Right. So you're up every hour of the day and you're doing a lot of administrative tasks that maybe you shouldn't be doing. So a lot of it's where they may be is where I was in my journey in 2016, 17 into 18.
Yeah. Do you also hear folks that maybe it sounds like that's the successful agent problem?
Mm-hmm.
What about the folks? What's the percentage of folks that are really successful having those problems relative to everyone else that's selling a few, but their issue is I don't have enough business.
Right.
Where's the business?
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, I don't have as many interactions you do with that conversation level. I would assume that would be the number one issue.
Mm-hmm. In this market, it is. In the past 2 years, you didn't hear that, right? Because they were growing at a rapid rate. And they've never had sold more homes in the past 2 years. Even though this year, 2023, is projected to be the third highest year in the history of sales of real estate.
I heard that. It's tough to believe that for most people.
Right. The values are obviously a lot different than they were in the 1980s and 90s, right? So it's based on volume and dollar amount. But if you had more inventory this year, I guarantee you that it would have been probably more than 21 and 22. Which is insane to believe considering where rates are. But I think that people understand that rates are not going to change too much. I do have some projections of what may happen, but I think that give it another year and a half, we'll be back to where the normal 30-year fixed rate in the mid fives would be.
And my last guest is a mutual friend of ours, Ayaz Rahmanji, right? Lender. And so he was giving his predictions, and it's similar. Everyone was hoping rates would come down quickly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, this is painful. We're going to wait. We're going to wait a few months. Let's get the dust to settle. Mm-hmm. And eventually you realize, if we plan on moving, if we need to move, we better get on it. Because we're not going to wait this thing out indefinitely.
Yeah. And what's going to happen when rates do come down? Prices go up. Yep. So what did you wait for? It's the same as you're getting it now.
And the challenging part, I think we live in upside down land. I don't know how you feel about it, but when you look at like the yield curve, we're in an inverted yield curve again, which would indicate a recession is looming. Mm-hmm. However, we were in that last year and that never happened. Yep. But we're at it again. The 10-year treasury notes are selling, like that yield is actually higher than the 30-year.
Yep.
And so all you need to know is that investors need to be compensated more for shorter term money than the longer term money. Mm-hmm. People are nervous. Investors are nervous. They're speculating. No one knows what's going on. Mm-hmm. And so I find it to be challenging because I'm having most of my conversations with clients, not agents. And it's challenging to educate and inform someone in such an uncertain time. Mm-hmm. And so, do you feel the same struggle that I do? You try to interpret this knowing that even the best and smartest have a tough time explaining where we are?
Yeah. I mean, anybody that tells you they know what's going to happen is not being honest. We don't have a crystal ball. However, we are hearing things from other professionals that are more qualified in a specialized space than we are. So, there's projections of what may happen, but at the end of the day, we're just giving our honest feedback of what may happen. Right. And listen, if I had a crystal ball in June and July of 2022, and I knew that rates were going to jump from 4% to 7%, I would have encouraged my buyers to pay $30,000 over asking price, depending how long they plan on staying in the house. If they said a year, then no. If they said 7 years, yes, you're going to make the money back in the interest savings in that period of time, depending on the price point. But naturally, it's hard for us to kind of say that because you don't want them to overpay in the case that you're wrong and rates stay the same for another year or, God forbid, forever, which would be great for us and the economy, but things had to change.
Yeah, and I find it challenging to be, I call myself like an economist of choice, right? I study this stuff like the Torah, it's like I'm on this stuff, but at the same time, I'm a salesperson. Yep. So it's awfully interesting, and I'm always cognizant of that when I'm watching TV or listening to someone. It's like, where is their motivation lie? Sure. Like, is this a salesperson telling me to buy now, or is this someone who's not getting paid based on the information in which they're giving me.
Sure.
So it's really challenging for me sometimes to give advice, which I know to be as accurate as I could possibly provide, while at the same time not smelling and sounding exactly like a sales guy.
Yeah.
So do you ever feel that struggle?
Yeah, I mean, real estate is a long-term game, right? Yeah. So you're right. There are times where, of course, we're sales, right? We are salespersons. However, there are times where I would ask a person what their timeline is and what their plans are the next 1 to 3 years. And if we plan on relocating, okay, if this house is not a potential investment property, it probably doesn't make the most sense to buy now. You're probably better off renting, short-term, transition to your next property when you plan on living there for the next 5 years, right? If it's a property where it's a potential investment, whether it's a townhome or a single-family home that isn't a rental space or has the ability for that to happen, then of course, go ahead and do it because you can't lose.
Yeah, and that's the best thing. It's like to piggyback on that idea. It's the reality that if you look at any 7 to 10 year stretch in the United States in terms of real estate, you see stabilization. So if you even bought at the worst of times back at the last crash, you could have waited 10 years. Those people today none of them are underwater, generally speaking, virtually nobody. Yeah. So time is your friend in real estate because it's an inflationary hedge. So even if you kind of screw up, quote unquote, timing, you're fine as long as your holding pattern or your holding length is sufficient. So you're giving great advice, and I think it's something that I think it's part of our job. The reason our jobs still exist and we're not completely replaced by robots yet, it's coming. It's because sometimes we have to help people through this decision making process. Because otherwise it'll be really challenging to navigate those waters. Yeah.
I don't think that we're going to be obsolete in this business. I think there is a space for the human interaction and trust. I do think there's going to be a lot of AI and access to resource information. Yeah. So if you wanted to find out about a home and it's all the age of mechanicals and roof and any issues it may have, that information will be readily available for you. But you still need the human interaction to tell you some things about the home that maybe you should know, be aware of, someone to tell you, hey, this is probably not the best buy, or this is a great investment. What's around them. So I think that we'll still have a value for sure for buyers.
Yeah. My opinion is that we're going to go the way of the financial industry. So the financial industry, they allowed all this trading online. So you can have a $5 trade, $7 trade. And so a lot of investors lost their jobs. And now AI has come into play as well with that. But even prior to that, you could trade online. And so the number of financial advisors, you would think that whole business would collapse. Like, why would you pay someone 1% of your value every year? I mean, it's crazy.
That's correct.
I always say, I'd like to sell you your home, and every year you don't move, you need to pay me 1% of that home's value. Just send me a check if you don't mind. That's what your financial advisor is doing.
That's correct. Yeah.
We get paid once. You live there 20 years.
That's right.
A little bit different.
Yeah.
So we're always on the grind, so to speak. But I just think our industry, you're going to have a consolidation. I think what we earn per file or per transaction is going to go down. And I think a lot of homes are going to transact without an agent. Not all, but it's no different than a lot of people go out there and they invest for themselves with their stocks and they don't want another person. And I think that's going to grow. But I don't think we're ever going to be completely separated, because I believe personally, some folks are going to want a human.
Yeah. They've been having this conversation for the past decade, right? About disruption in the business and the industry. And if you look at it, to buy every brokerage in the U.S., it's about like $60 billion, right? This is Remax Keller Williams.
Elon Musk could write a check today
and buy the whole real estate industry for $60 million. There has been well over $60 million or $1 billion invested in to try to disrupt and create different opportunities and how they can take control of the market. SoftBank, Amazon, they have pumped in so much money and it still has not happened. So I think that it just shows that it's a lot more complex than I think that people think it is. Right. I do think things will change. They have changed in the past few years, but I don't think there's going to be an absence of humans.
Let's hope not, for all of our sake.
Yeah.